Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Vijayji, for a wonderful session. Namo Namaha Punah Milama. All right. Radhe Radhe. Good morning. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita session. We will continue on our discussion on the concept of Dharma. We introduced it yesterday, and we will go a little deeper into that concept today. And this is one of the key learnings from Bhagavad Gita, right? This Dharma, and despite people saying that they have gone through Bhagavad Gita, they have read Bhagavad Gita, this one concept, for some reason, they're not able to get it. Okay, and get it, or for some reason, they're not able to grasp the gravity of it or understand it in its true essence. And that is what we are going to talk about today. So let me share my screen. We'll get started by invoking the blessings of God and Guru. Give me a sec. All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Nitinji.
You're not in the presentation mode yet.
That's right.
Okay, should be able to see it now. So let's get started. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. All right. So Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening to all of you. Welcome to today's edition. Let's get started. So this is a shloka that we are doing right now, which introduces the concept of dharma here, where Lord Krishna is talking about dharma, and that is what we are talking about. Before we get into why he takes on a dissension, it's important for us to understand this concept of very dharma itself. So let's get started. We'll recite it, and then we can take a few hands today to get today's session going. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirbhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Meena ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirbhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Radhe Radhe.
Nice, thank you, Vinaji. Radhe Radhe.
Rahul ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirbhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Radhe Radhe.
Dinesh ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirbhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham.
Very nice, thank you, Dinesh.
Keshav ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirbhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Radhe
Nice.
Radhe.
Okay, thank you, Keshavji. Okay, we can take a few more hands.
Shyamji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
Shyam.
राधे राधे यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् राधे राधे
Nice, thank you, Shyamji. Radhe Radhe.
Tarunji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
राधे राधे यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानं धर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् राधे
Very
राधे
nice. Radhe Radhe. Okay, let's freeze the hands and
Four
One,
more
two.
hands.
4 more hands. Okay, let's go with that. Last.
Radhe Radhe Rupaji. Please go ahead.
राधे राधे यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ज्ञानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्
Very nice,
राधे
Rupaji.
राधे
Even Lord Krishna would not have envisioned that somebody could recite it while talifying the pudis. Okay, so very nicely pulled off. All right. Let's take the remaining hands and we'll get started.
After Rupaji, I'll take sister to other counterpart. Lakshmi ji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe everyone. Yatha yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Radhe Radhe.
Nice. Shri Radhe Radhe.
There's one
All right.
extra hand since we.
Maybe we'll take, let's quickly take those and then we get started. We have enough to discuss today.
Pragi ji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
And
Yeah,
let's take
thank you.
let's take them.
Radhe
Other
Yada,
Pragi.
yeah, Radhe Radhe. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyudhanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Thank you, Pragi ji.
Thank
All right. Let's quickly take, we can take all three. I think we can enjoy Rupa ji's puri making in the meantime, and please continue.
Riya ji, thank you for waiting. Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Yeah.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyuttanamadharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Thank
Thank
you, Riya ji.
you. Radhe Radhe.
Okay. Last two hands. Please.
Uday ji, Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead.
या राधे
Radhe.
राधे यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् राधे राधे
Diva.
Radhe Radhe Diva. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Diva, very nice. All right, Chetan, real quick.
Yes, Radhe Radhe Chetan. Please go ahead.
राधे राधे एवरीवन यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानि भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्.
Wonderful, short and sweet. All right, so let's get started. So in this, Lord Krishna is saying, whenever there is a decline in righteousness and an increase in unrighteousness, so Arjun, at that time, I manifest myself on earth. And that is what we were discussing. We'll do a quick recap. Dharma, we said it has three salient features. It is universal in appeal. It is not limited to any sect or religion. It is timeless. They once said, always remains. These laws do not decay over time or do not need any kind of a revision. because they become dated. No, that's not the case. They are timeless principles. And then they are self-evident. Okay, it gives proof in form of, not only in the form of law of karma, but within the life itself, right? There are certain principles you follow, you see the results for them. So these are the three salient features of dharma. Then we also spoke about dharmasya glanir, right? What is dharmasya glani? Is it that the dharma can decline? Dharma can decline, or it can decay. It cannot decline. It is actually the people who follow it actually declines. Okay, that is what Lord Krishna is referring to. So dharma continues to exist, and it is not affected whether we follow it or we do not follow it. Right? It is like fire. Fire will do its job, whether you put your hand knowingly or you put your hand unknowingly, right? It will do its job. Similarly, those principles are principles. Whether you acknowledge it, whether you believe in it, whether you know it, whether you don't know it, it will do its job. And that is why for us, it is important for us to understand and align to it, basically, so that we are not on the wrong side of dharma. Now, then we discussed, the dharma is prescribed actions which are conducive to our spiritual growth and progress. And then the reverse of this is adharma, which is unrighteousness. If you don't do it in accordance, it is called unrighteousness. And when unrighteousness prevails, that is like more people, they do not follow the dharmic aspect of what God has spoken about in Vedas or scriptures as a manual of life. Then the creator and administrator of the world intervenes by descending and re-establishing dharma. Now it has to be a critical mass, not that we are seeing some crime happening somewhere and God will come and descend and fix it. He knows what is the right movement and the critical mass around it. The fact that this earth is sustained is that there are enough people out there, they might be in minority, that Harinam is still there. Okay, they are able to sustain this earth. And then when the Harinam or the God's name will completely evaporate or completely on the advanced stage of decay, that's probably when God feels it's the need to intervene, because the message gets distorted, and then he needs to do some kind of a course correction ground up at that point. And when he comes, basically, it's part of his causeless grace. So is it when you run alone, it's called race. When Krishna runs with you, it's called grace. So we need to tap into God's grace. That's the key thing here. And it is an important concept to understand. We spoke about dharma is something which is inseparable from something. It is an inherent part of that particular entity's nature itself. Like, for example, we looked at water and wetness, they are inseparable. Then we say fire and heat, they are inseparable. Milk and whiteness are inseparable. Sugar and sweetness are inseparable. And extending that logic, we said we looked at so many things that we do in our life, day-to-day life, right? Raising kids, helping family, watering plants, call of duty in terms of fighting war or working at office, hosting guests and relatives, right? Exercising, so many activities that we do, taking out pets. And the common denominator in all of these is we are doing some form of seva. Okay, we are serving somebody. That is how the universe is designed. So can we take seva out of the equation from our own existence? We cannot. We have to do seva. Okay, if we don't have anybody to do seva for, we will find a pet and start taking the pet out. We'll do the seva of the pet. That is how we are designed. So do you have a choice but not to do seva? No. And if not, nothing, that you are doing seva of your body only, right? That is how we are designed, because our constitutional position is that of being a part of a whole, and we have to serve the whole in some form or manner. So seva is something which is inseparable from us. And then we spoke, when it comes to doing seva, we don't have a choice. But when it comes to doing seva, in which direction we do have a choice. Now, if we are doing seva for the sake of our own self, it is called bhog. And if we are doing seva for the sake of pleasure of God, it is called yoga. Okay, that is essentially what Karam Yoga is. So when we are doing any of these activities with an intent that we are going to enjoy, or it is mine, or I'm doing it for myself or for this particular cause or for my own ego or prestige or anything, then it becomes a binding karma. But when we do it, that these abilities have been endowed to me by God, and I need to do it to the best of my ability for the pleasure of God, then it becomes yoga. Okay. So seva and our existence is inseparable. That was the key concept we spoke about yesterday. Now let's move on. We'll get deeper into the concept of dharma. Types of dharma. So we'll talk about dharma, higher dharma, highest dharma. Okay. Now this is a very important concept in Bhagavad Gita that needs to be understood in its entirety. Okay. And if you come across people who claim to have read Bhagavad Gita or might be reading Bhagavad Gita, this concept will not click. Trust me, it stops at a certain point, and they're not able to appreciate the depth of this particular concept. So let's talk about the types of dharma to begin with. So there are swadharma. We talk about swadharma. What is swadharma? One's duty as an individual in accordance with the Vedas. Okay. Now the operative word or the key word here is swa. What do you consider swa? Yourself. Okay. Currently, the state that we are in, swa means for us is this body. Somebody asks you, who are you? We look at a mirror and we think that we are this body. We relate to our mind as ourselves. So we are in a state, in a conditioned state where our identity is synonymous with our body at this point. Okay. And hence, that swa becomes the duties, which is called Aparadharma, material duties or mundane duties, which are at the platform of the body itself. Okay. Like I said, since a vast majority of humankind does not possess this spiritual perspective that we are spirit souls, divine souls, Vedas also understand that part. Okay. Vedas know that majority of mankind will not get to that understanding what their true identity is. Right? Socrates had said, know thyself. Who are you, first of all? That is a very deep question. And the quest of finding out who are we is basically the progression that we make in our spiritual journey. Who are we? And since vast majority of humankind, they don't have the spiritual perspective, Vedas have given prescribed duties for those who see themselves as the body. So these are at the platform of a body. All the duties at the platform of the body, which is called Aparadharma, or material duties or mundane duties. Okay. Now these duties are incumbent upon us. If you look at it, these are defined according to one's ashram. Right? Varnashram dharam we speak about, like starting from the brahmacharya and then sannyas all the way up to that station in life, and varna means occupation as well, depending upon which occupation you are born in or you are groomed in or you end up doing. So then there are prescribed duties defined for that as well, and this is called Aparadharma. But the point here to be understood is it is at the level of the body. Okay, who are you? What kind of occupation you are in, or if you are in a grihastha ashram, or if you are in a brahmacharya ashram, or if you are in a sannyas vanprastha ashram, what are the different things that you should be doing? The code of conduct that is defined for human beings, for people who are in the conditioned state of thinking that they are this body. So this is called Aparadharma. And that is where Lord Krishna starts in Bhagavad Gita as well, right? And for some people, Bhagavad Gita and at that message alone, he's asking Arjun to fight. Why? Because he's a Kshatriya. Then what is the reason he gives? He says, as a Kshatriya, it is your duty, it is your moral obligation to defend your praja. Because if you won't do that, then there will be moral degradation down the line as well. People will suffer. And then what is the reason he gives? Why? What happens if you fight? He gives the reason: if you fight, either you will win the war, then you can enjoy the kingdom, or you will die in the war. And then it's called Veergati ko prapt hona, and then you'll get celestial abodes. And he says you have laddu in both of your hands. On the contrary, if you run away from your duty, then you will call infamy and you will set a very wrong example for the rest of the world. That is the first beckoning Lord Krishna gives to Arjun, and it is the first mundane engagement that he has. He gives him a call of duty at the level of his body. Okay, that is where Bhagavad Gita starts. But we should not end Bhagavad Gita there only. It goes much deeper after that. Okay, that's just a starting point for Arjun until Arjun starts engaging in a dialogue with Krishna and says, if the ultimate aim is God realization, why to even take the trouble of fighting this war and not go to forests and stuff like that, right? So it is just the beginning of Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is beckoning him. Now, as a Kshatriya, he's of course has to, now see, he's a householder. He's a householder. So there are duties as a householder for him, right? When he's raising a family or taking care of his wife or making sure the ends, he's able to meet ends and stuff like that. But then he's a Kshatriya as well. So if the country is on war, like we have people who are in army. Now, if the country is on war, which is a higher dharma at that point? Is Varnashram dharma or the call of duty? There's always a higher dharma in a given situation. It's very difficult to know that. Sometimes it is apparent. Most of the times it is not. It is said, right, even in Chanakya Niti, what would you call a higher dharma in a given situation? It's a very loaded or a difficult thing to know. If your house is on fire, sorry, your community is on fire, would you save your family first? Or if you are called upon to save, which can save maybe 50 families, help out in that? We don't know. So those are some of the things. It's very difficult to know that. And then, like even in Chanakya Niti, I was talking about, he has said very clearly that for the sake of a family, an individual can be sacrificed. So that becomes your higher dharma at that point, right? From an administration standpoint, for the sake of a community, family can be sacrificed. For the sake of a country, city can be sacrificed, and for the sake of the globe, a country can be sacrificed. So in every situation, you could have a country, which is called Dharam Sankat. Also, people say that, right? Very difficult to know. We'll talk about some of the examples here as well. So there is a dharma, which anyway we have to do based on the station of life that we are in, right? As per the scriptural injunctions. And then there is a higher dharma in every situation as well, which is very difficult to know. You can do your best in a given situation. In the purity of intention and sincerity at heart is your insurance policy. Only God and Guru would know. No, we don't have an ability to know that. But this whole thing comes under your material dharma. Now, Prithviraj Chauhan, did he perform his dharma when he kept on leaving Muhammad Gauri for 17 times? Was that his higher dharma at that point of forgiving somebody, or to take care of him, nip it in the bud? Because 18th time he defeated, and after that we know what happened, right? What happened to women and the loot and what happened to the kids afterwards. So these are very tricky things to know. I mean, if you look at it from a king's standpoint, probably he did not discharge his duty by not taking care of the threat that was looming over his kingdom by continuing to forgive him. Now, forgiveness, was it a good thing to practice in that context? Probably not. So it's very debatable. What is a dharma and a higher dharma kind of a thing? And then to simplify, and yet it's simple and yet complicated, the other aspect of Swadharma, if you consider Swa, you are truly situated in the knowledge that you are a divine spirit soul, then your spiritual dharma or paradharma is considering oneself to be the soul. The prescribed duty is to love and serve God with devotion. Okay, that is the dharma at a level of a soul. So you have your material mother and father, material relations, and then you have a spiritual mother and father. Now, if there is a loggerhead between the two, which takes precedence? The spiritual dharma takes precedence. Okay, that is the key. But we don't have that conception as yet. We will be willing to shed tears. It said when we truly are situated in the knowledge who we are really, you will start shedding tears. You know how ungrateful we have been for so many lifetimes to our spiritual mother and father. We shed tears for our biological or material mother and father. But then when you truly have that conception, and the tears will start rolling down, because we have been just living our life, right? Without even bothering to even inquire how causelessly merciful our eternal spiritual mother and father have been. But the Paradharma, now if you think about Bhagavad Gita's message as well, it starts with the Paradharma at the level of body. You are a Kshatriya, fight the war. And Paradharma talks at a soul level. The highest dharma for a soul is to engage in the loving duty for God. And that is where it cannot happen. Right now you're a Kshatriya or whichever occupation you are in, all of a sudden you'll start loving God, right? It's not a unit step function. It's a journey. And that is where that gap is bridged through the beautiful science of work that God has presented, calling Karma Yoga. He says it's not going to happen. Even he understands that. So right now we are situated in this knowledge that we are a body. So you continue working, thinking yourself as a body. Gradually start building this consciousness that you are doing it for the pleasure of God. Who is providing the energy for you? When you start building that consciousness, eventually it will lead you to a stage which is in the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita, Sarveshu Kaleshu Ma Manusmar Yuddhascha. Krishna tells Arjun that not even for a moment forget me, and then perform your duty in that consciousness, and the victory, not the victory shall be yours, and that is the way to go basically. So that is the ultimate dharma for a soul. There's no higher dharma than that. So if somebody is already aligned to that, you're already performing the basically the highest dharma. There's nothing higher than that highest. Okay, so there's a dharma, there's a higher dharma, and then there's a highest dharma. This is the highest dharma. There's nothing higher than that. You're already aligning to the highest dharma around it. So this is a very important concept to understand. When you start building a devotional heart, you start aligning to the things that are needed for you to cultivate devotion and bhav. You are actually started aligning to your true dharma, not just limited at your bodily level. But until we have perfected that, we need to continue performing our bodily dharma as well. That is what the instruction of Lord Krishna is, because otherwise we will become irresponsible, careless, and spirituality will become a mere excuse for us to turn our back towards the world, okay, which is not how it's meant to be. We'll talk about the vairagya that is needed for actually you to devote completely yourself to it, right? It is like when the fruit is ripe, do we need to pluck it? When fruit is truly ripe, it automatically falls from the tree. Similarly, when you are truly there, you don't even have to think about it. It's like you will walk away. Okay, call of God is so strong, it is the strongest call that one can get in life. So when you are truly ready for doing full-blown paradharma only, you don't have to seek anybody's permission at that point, right? You are doing it right now in addition with your other dharma as well. But when you think you are completely there, like they talk about karam sannyas, it's like it just happens organically, naturally at that point. Okay, nobody can stop you at that point. You don't even need to debate it in your hand. Like Buddha just walked up one day and the fruit has just fallen off the tree at that point. Yes, Sandhya, you had a question?
So you said unless we have perfected our Paradharma, we should continue to follow our Aparadharma. So in that
Hand in hand it goes, yeah.
So in that context, what really defines our Aparadharma? Is that by Veda, or we can keep our Paradharma in the center and accordingly define our Aparadharma?
It's a difficult question for in that sense to know. Aparadharma basically it will go. So see, the proportion keeps on decreasing over time, right? You would do the bare minimum and somehow you will be able to draw lines around that. Now, how far you can go in Paradharma? How do you so this is enough basically? That is where when you start doing that, typically you will know where the lines can be drawn around it, as opposed to going overboard around it, right? Now, your Aparadharma does not dictate you to be part of every marriage in your family, right? You would do that and you will draw some lines. You will not go to your friends, brothers, cousins, uncles' marriage at that point. So that is where I think those lines will automatically start getting drawn, and intuitively you would know that, okay, this is the bare minimum you need to do, as part of your duty. But beyond that, you don't need to bend your back and compromise on your other aspect of it, right? So when you do your paradharma, that means you are engaging in seva, satsang, and sadhana. That starts becoming a non-negotiable part of your routine, just like you brush your teeth or have your food. And then the proportion of that would start increasing over time, right? That is how you would increase in that path, right? Otherwise, your paradharma will always keep dragging you down, right? Somebody will always have some expectations from you, and world knows how to keep you busy, basically. But yeah, yeah.
So I was just having this yardstick that whatever enables me to do my Paradharma,
yeah,
doing those basic minimal Paradharma, is that fine?
That's right. I mean, that's essentially what Swamiji says as well, right? I asked him about my job. Do I have some dharma towards my company and stuff like? He said, forget it, right? So we just have to do, see, something is putting food on your table and giving you a roof, and you have to justify that part. You do that. It's not saying you cheat there and you don't work. You do that. But beyond that, you don't need to bend your back where you are becoming ambitious in life. And now I need to do this and add another zero to my bank account and get that next executive post and get that bigger house that my neighbor has, bigger than that. Those kind of things we need to, put it in perspective so that we are truly shifting our attention for something that is beneficial for us, right? See, all along in all of our lifetimes, we have been taking care of the cage, but the parrot is still starved. So that is the whole problem, right? So you have a parrot in a cage. We are taking care of cage. We are shining it, polishing it, doing all the decorations on the cage. What's the point? Parrot is saying, I'm still not getting what I need. Now, when you started feeding parrot, of course, the cage has to take a little bit of a, what you call that, it has to go a little bit into the background. It cannot be at the foreground all the times. So less of cage and more of parrot now is essentially the message of spirituality is. Okay. All right. So moving on. I hope the difference between Paradharma and Aparadharma is clear. And we will not say Bhagavad Gita is all about fighting. Okay. That is just the basic start of the message where Lord Krishna is giving him a call to action. You are a Kshatriya, go. We'll get into the deeper philosophy there as well. He's fighting. Do fight, do perform your duty, but the science of work is important. In what consciousness you need to do. And in order for us to get to that consciousness, it takes effort. It takes repeated practice. It takes a lot of grit. It takes a lot of letting go. It takes a lot of resolve and determination that, yes, this is important, right? So get to that stage. See, if you look at the stage of surrender, finally, surrender is a state of doing nothing. But in order for us to get to the stage of doing nothing, we have to do a lot of things, right? So this is how it goes. You have to do nothing finally. But for you to do nothing, you have to do a lot of things to get to that stage. So that is how surrender goes. Let's move on. Now let's look at Bhishma Pitama. This dharma thing, it's a very loaded thing. Did he get it right? Bhishma Pitama? He's one of the 12 Mahajans, by the way. Okay, Mahajans is one of the surnames in India, not that Mahajan. Mahajan means some great personalities. And so did he get it right, basically? Now, in this case, he enumerated against 12 great Mahajans. Who are those? The Brahma, the Narad, Lord Shiv, four Kumars, Bhagwan Kapil, Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Jarak Maharaj, Bhishma, Bali, Shukadev Muni, Vedvyas. Now, was he attached to Swadharma, Paradharma, or Aparadharma? Anybody? See, we're talking about some great personalities. They're not ordinary mortals like us. Did he get it right? Anybody who wants to take a shot at it? Yes, Sandhya, go ahead. Shyamji is going to. Okay, now I see a couple of more hands. Yes, quickly, let's hear from them.
You can hear from Shyamji maybe, or should I?
Yes, Shyamji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Sandhya. I guess he was more attached to his kingdom than to the dharma. To look at the larger picture, than to support the righteousness or those support Pandavas or anybody else. He was more glued to his kingdom. That it should be safe. It should be safe. Whether it was going the right way, the wrong way, either way.
Loyalty to kingdom.
So. Yeah.
So loyalty to kingdom fall into Paradharma or Aparadharma?
That's the point to be taken care of.
Okay, Preeti ji.
Yeah, Swati ji has also commented in the chat, no. Basically, he was not following his Paradharma, and a lot of people are answering Aparadharma in the chat. Preeti ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe everyone. I think he was a good combination of all the three.
True.
Not sure, but I think so. The offhand answer is this.
Yes. It's a very nuanced answer you gave. So I'll touch upon that. Yes, very nuanced answer. You covered everything. So yes, there are questions, right? In entrance, they come correct the best answer and then all of these. So all of these is the right answer. Yeah, but yeah, good thing. Yeah, Keshavji, you wanted to add something real quick and then I'll move on because I wanted to bring in a couple of other examples as well.
I
Yes.
think he was attached to Aparadharma only, not Paradharma. Because for me as personal, my instance, what happened like couple of years ago, I was working for a medical device company and I quit the job. Why? Because they were doing Aparadharma and I wanted Paradharma. So I quit the job. Because defective parts they were accepting under the pretext, oh, it's a lot of money. So that killed my soul, which I didn't want. So I quit the job.
Got it. Got it. All right. So we'll get back to it, Tarunji and Joanji. So let's continue on that because it's a pretty interesting discussion. Now, on the battlefield, you know what he says? So he has taken an oath of allegiance to the kingdom. If you look at it from that standpoint, of course, it is Aparadharma. It's at the bodily level. Nothing exceeds more than, devotion to God at that point. And he's a pretty enigmatic character in Bhagavad Gita, and an interesting character as well. I was having a discussion with Swamiji and he said, certain sages, they believe that Bhishma Pitama, he purposely chose the side of Kauravas to glorify Krishna. That look, on one hand, you have Bhishma Pitama, invincible guy. If he's fully armed and he has that boon that he could leave his life years on his own volition, Mrityu, he could control that. So you have Bhishma on one side, and then on the other side, you have Krishna, right, who's basically unarmed. And despite Bhishma being on one side, the side which had Krishna won. So in order to glorify, he did that Leela. So if you look at it on the battlefield, he said, right, Ajahu Harina Shastra Gahaun. He actually, it's a very beautiful thing. He says that if I do not make the Supreme Lord Krishna lift weapons today, I will shame my mother Ganga. And I'm not the son of King Shantanu. Because he was a Rasik saint, he made God break his vow. So actually, if you look at it purely from the sense of the oath that he had taken, he was performing an Aparadharma. Okay, you cannot bind yourself into something material or something related to this world wherein God may desire something else. Then you have to align to that will. So finally, he made Krishna lift his weapons, and it is said that when he was lying on that bed of arrows, he would do Rup Dhyan on Krishna only. And the form that he would do Rup Dhyan is the form of Krishna, which he showed him in the battlefield, where his red face and all the dust on his face and those eyes, and that is the form where he used to meditate when he would come back, grazing cows, where the dust would fall on his face and stuff, and that is the form he used to meditate upon. So he aligned to God's will finally in his own way. So in that sense, he performed his Paradharma as well towards the end, right, when it came to that position. But yeah, if you look purely from that oath standpoint, owing his allegiance to the throne and living by it, it is nothing but at the level of bodily dharma only, nothing more than that. Now, if you look at Yudhishthir, for that matter, he would not lie. Paradharma or Aparadharma? Anybody who wants to take that question? Not lying. I mean, it's of course a virtue. It's a saintly virtue. God is saying truth. I am the truth. I sit in the truth. Now, if somebody is attached to truth, is it a Paradharma or a Paradharma?
Tarunji? Radhe
Yeah,
Radhe.
so I think both Yudhishthir and Bhishma, I would say they both were attached to their own self, pratigya, vow. So Bhishma ne Bhishma pratigya li thi that I'll never, I'll always be loyal to my kingdom. And Yudhishthir, I think, has pratigya that I'll never speak false. Even so, both can go wrong when maybe to save a life. And yeah, so in that sense, I think they both were attached to their own selfishness, whatever they have taken.
Right.
So
good point.
in my sphere, it goes to Apara.
Okay.
Radhe Radhe.
To Apara. Rahul, how about you? And then we'll come to you, Preeti ji.
Yes, Rahulji, Radhe Radhe.
Aparadharma.
Paradharma. It's like no doubt whatsoever Rahul has. It's a Paradharma. Okay. See, truthfulness is a good thing, right? But then why is it a Paradharma? We'll get to that. Yes, Preeti ji?
Yes, Preeti ji.
Kind of. But if it is only being truthfulness, then it is his righteousness. But he has several other traits we need to take into consideration. So if you're talking about his truthfulness, yes, it is his righteousness.
Truthfulness, yes. If he's
Only
living by
one.
the,
Yeah, only one aspect.
yeah, that's true.
There are
That aspect.
dimensions. There are dimensions to his character too.
So yeah, in this particular context, we'll focus on truthfulness aspect, and I'm telling you, it is still Aparadharma. Why? Because God is asking him to speak a lie, Ashwathama, and he could not. Under his breath, he muttered, Nar, nahi kunjar, that it is what's not nar, it is kunjar, means the elephant, because he was so attached to his dharma, he could not, he negated the creator of the dharma's word also. Who's created the dharma? There's no higher dharma than following God's instructions. And it's like the traffic policeman is telling you, go. But you say, you know what? I'm seeing the traffic light as red. So my dharma tells me I will never cross it. He's saying, policeman is saying, go. I'm telling you this light is stuck. Okay, it has some problem. You go and you say, no, I will not go. Whenever I see red light, I just have to stop. So that is essentially what is happening. Krishna is saying, go and lie. In this particular case, simply say Ashwathama is dead. And he's attached to his dharma. He's not able to surrender his intellect to God, who has created the very dharma itself, right? Nobody knows dharma better than God. Now you would say what kind of a God he is, and that's a different topic of discussion, okay? Krishna did a lot of things that, if you look at it, I think it is said that his chariot, because he was such a truthful guy, would always be, I think, few feet or maybe few inches above the air. But when he said that, he did not follow Krishna's instruction to the letter T. His chariot for the first time touched the ground. So there's no higher dharma than following the instruction of God. What is the last statement of Bhagavad Gita? 18.6 is, he says, Sarv dharmam parityajye mamekam sharanam braj. So forget about all the dharma. Then Krishna gives a lot of dope on dharma to Arjun. And finally he says, forget about dharma also and just surrender to me. That is the highest dharma. So he did not surrender that point. He was so attached to his dharma. So it falls into a Paradharma category as well. Sandhya, you wanted to add something?
There are few comments and questions. So there's a comment, what God says, that becomes dharma.
True.
Then there's a question, when truth is God, how does sticking to truth not Paradharma?
Because now in this case, the conflict is happening between God and that particular sticking to truth. And God is saying, lie, you lie. That is why I'm saying, if God comes in front of you, assuming you are 200% sure it's God, and he asks you to commit a sin, would you? That's a question, right? You would. Because there is no higher dharma than surrendering to God. Ultimately, Paradharma is surrendering to God. So following his instruction is the highest dharma. So if he asks you to do that and you're sure he's God, you do that. It's very simple. You don't hesitate at that point. Okay, I hope that gets registered. It's a big thing. That's how it comes. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody will tell you to go and do jihad. You have to be very sure that person is God. Okay. So people can take advantage of it, but the key thing is God's word. We don't get the advantage of what basically Yudhishthir and Arjun got, right? They were anyway realized people. They were not ordinary people. All the Pandavas for that matter. But then the point here is God's word takes precedence over everything else. Yes, Jyotiji, you wanted to add something?
There is a follow-up question in the chat. Can I just quickly finish that?
We'll hear from Jyotiji.
In this case, to speak untruth, God himself not following laws of dharma.
Yeah, God can make an exception and do his rule, and there is a rule that he follows to make that exception as well. Okay, so only he knows that. So in order to crack God's head, we have to become like God first. So we cannot say, I know dharma. See, what is our existence? We have no basis. So if God is front of you and he's telling you something and he's breaking a rule, so be it. Okay, we accept it. It's his world, it's his creation, and he knows best for us, basically, in that sense. Then if our intellect is, what is a 2-inch worth of intellect we cannot put in front of what God is telling in that point. It's a pretty loaded thing. I get it, but that's how it goes basically. All right.
Yeah.
Yes. You wanted to add something?
Yes, Jyotiji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. When speaking untruth,
leads to more righteousness. That is where the scales are lying in this case. By speaking one untruth, Bhagwanji is saving the Pandavas, and that is why he's speaking the untruth. And in this case, it's like the story where a cow is escaping a butcher and it comes into your sharan. Are you going to show the cow, or are you going to hide the cow by speaking a lie? Because by speaking a lie, you're actually saving the life of the cow, and you're not going to be judged by speaking the untruth. And it is said that Bhagwanji does not care about his own man samman. He will do anything for the devotee. He will even become unrighteous in order to save the devotee, which is what Bhagwanji did for saving Arjun from Bhishma Pitama. He spoke untruth in this case as well. There's so many kindnesses that Bhagwanji does. And if we try to judge him by those things and say that we want to be untruthful like him, then let's be even more dharmic like him first before we go down that path. Radhe Radhe.
Beautiful, Jyotiji. I think you just hit the nail on the head and covered it, just summarized it so well. Very true. See, if we selectively pick up God, right? I mean, God is God, of course. We can't do that. First, we should have the ability to lift the Govardhan. We should have the ability to speak Bhagavad Gita. Then we should copy the other aspects of it. So for now, let's take it on the face value. God is doing things. He's causelessly merciful. He never does something for himself, right? In fact, gods and saints, every act that they do is for the welfare of others. So in those sense, the key point that you were trying to drive here is the highest dharma is to become Sharanagat to God. There's no higher dharma than that, right? It's Chitragupta is not going to record it as an untruth. Okay, you lied because God told you to, and you should not have lied. And because you lied, now I'm going to give you the punishment for it. He'll say, no, you actually performed the higher dharma in that particular situation by aligning to God's will. But there's no higher dharma than that. And the dharmas are not applicable to God, by the way. His janma karma chume divyam, he's divine. So it's like dharma is for mortal people. So if you have a traffic light, the car will have to stop, the motorcycle will have to stop. Now helicopter is flying, will it stop? That rule is not applicable to the helicopter, right? Similarly, these rules, mode of conduct, or the code of conducts that he himself has created for the ordinary mortals. If he chooses to violate that, there is a bigger purpose, divine plan behind it. And we have to go with that. Yes, Sandhya?
So,
Karan, he's also an interesting character. It evokes a lot of emotions around it, right? Now, yes, go ahead.
like it seems regarding previous characters, some people still need some convincing, I guess. So I'll just read out the comments. So first comment is aligns with law of land changes from time to time. God too can change his rules. So that's one. Then there is a comment. My understanding is that Bhish Pitama felt obligated to the kingdom because the king was providing the food that he was eating and roof over his head. Example, he felt obligated to keep quiet when Draupadi was being disrobed.
True. He felt obligated and he was performing his Aparadharma to perfection. No doubt about that. The only problem happens when it conflicts with God's desire or God's will in that particular situation. Okay, at that time, you are what? So if in that case, did he know that Krishna was God at that point? He was one of the few people who knew that, by the way. Okay, when he showed his cosmic form, he knew that. And he used to be a Rasik saint. He used to actually do Roop Dhyan on Krishna in his meditation. That's what he did for 6 months as well. So in those situations, in fact, like Preetiji pointed out, he actually aligned to his God's will. It was a win-win. He said, okay, I'm going to fight. And I'm going to fight in such a way that I either slay Arjun today or make Krishna break his vow. And what does Krishna do? He breaks his vow. He said, I'm not going to lift any weapon. And he said, I'm going to kill you. So he made him break his vow. And finally, he aligned to God's will only, right? You know, finally what happened. So he did both in reality. But for most part of his life, until Krishna confronted him in the battlefield, in the way he did, he was aligning to his Aparadharma only, bodily dharma only. But finally, when he exited, he aligned to Paradharma in that sense, if you ask me in that sense. The point here is anything that conflicts with God's will becomes Paradharma. It's only at a bodily level. Sharanagati means you align to God's will.
So this question is coming to knowing God's will. So how could Yudhishthir know that he would be following righteousness by speaking a lie? After all, Krishna was also in a human form at that time.
Right. So the Pandavas knew very well. By the way, Pandavas were realized. So let me ask you, why didn't Krishna impart the message of Bhagavad Gita to Yudhishthir or somebody else? He chose Arjun. Now, Arjun did not do what Yudhishthir did. Did he do any kintu parantu? And he said, shoot Karan on his back. And when he's facing you and he's armed, you cannot kill him. Arjun did not say, my Kshatriya Dharma does not tell me to do that. I cannot do what will people think about me. This is my only opportunity to prove to the world and lay this argument to rest that Arjun was the best archer and Karan was not. He did not do that kintu parantu. He just swallowed that pill, Sharanagat Buddhi, and killed Karna. Yudhishthir could not do that. Even Arjun took that. Just imagine a person of Arjun's stature, how much ego a person could have at that point. He just swallowed that. He simply said, okay, Krishna, whatever you say, I will go with that. That is what is Sharanagat Buddhi is. Yudhishthir could not speak a lie. Arjun could actually give up everything. He was willing to take on infamy for that as well, just to honor God's wish at that point. So that is Sharanagat.
And just the last comment, God sees the big picture in the larger scheme of things, and therefore can lie and ask others to lie too.
True. In case of Karan also, let's look at it. When Krishna said, hey, shoot him, Karan asked, what kind of God are you? His ears were very strong because he was born out of fear, right? We know that story. His ears heard it. He said, Krishna, what kind of God are you? Who's asking, this? You are just breaking the whole laws of Dharma here. And Krishna smiled. He said, Dharma? What Dharma are you talking about? When Draupadi was being disrobed, taking the side of Duryodhan for the sake of friendship alone, because he favored you or gave you respect, or for that matter, killing Abhimanyu. What Dharma are you talking about? So God knows what law of karma to, make it catch up with you in the same life or in another life and all the steps. So he said, don't talk about Dharma with me here. And then Karna said, all right. And then Arjun was anyway Sharanagat to him, right? So Karna was a very interesting character. So that is also, if you look at it, he was also following Aparadharma. He did not know probably Krishna was, he also knew Krishna was God. In fact, people knew at that point who were sufficiently spiritually elevated or who were avataris, like Pandavas were, that Krishna is God. But still they chose the other side for whatever reason. And when we try to obstruct God's desire in any way, at best it can fall into Aparadharma. It could be because of friendship. It could be because of your situation as what you think you are in that, you might have given a vow of allegiance, or you think this is what the right thing for you to do is. But if it is contradicting with God's desire, it becomes your Aparadharma, nothing more than that at that point. It is not Paradharma. That is the key concept here. So all the things that we do in this world, right? We have so many obligations, friends obligations, and then family obligations. This all that is needed. But if we just do that only, we are simply restricting ourselves to Aparadharma. That is the key message, basically, that we are discussing today. We are restricting ourselves to Aparadharma only, and Aparadharma, if performed to perfection, at best can give us celestial abode. It cannot give us liberation from the cycle of life and death. And it can definitely not give us the Paramdham or the abode of God, not even moksha for that matter. So if we harbor any ambitions of crossing the cycle of life and death, if at all we do, for whatever we have a good reason to believe it's important to get out of this material jail, then we need to start aligning more towards Paradharma and restrict our Aparadharma to whatever is required and needed, and not go overboard on that. It's only because we have been going overboard in this Aparadharma side that is making us repeat in this world. Sometimes higher, better lives in good families, rich families, comfortable living, maybe celestial abodes, but we are still playing the game here in this conditioned state only. Okay, we can have better life. We'll have worse life. Sometimes we are born rich. Sometimes we are born poor. Sometimes we go to celestial abodes. Sometimes we go to the lower abodes. That cycle will continue until we start focusing towards Paradharma more and eventually perfect it. That is the hope with God and Guru's grace. We are not going to break out of this shackle of life and death. That is the key thing. Yes.
Topic of Dharma, so many questions are coming up.
I know it's a pretty interesting topic. Dharma is a very Dharam Sankat we fall into, right? Yeah. What are the
Maybe
other things?
after these hands, I will take up the ones which are there in chat. So, Shyamji, Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. So that means that everybody in Mahabharata Yug knew who Krishna is. But since they were all following Aparadharma, only Arjuna knew Krishna as Krishna. That too, after he listened to 18th chapter and 700 shloka, he could do what he wanted to do. But before that, he was saying Kittu Parantu. But if you look at Bhishma Pitama or Karan, or as a matter of fact, anybody else, they all knew Krishna was Krishna, but they were able to believe him. But that took Arjuna to listen to entire Gita Gyan, tab he could surrender to God and he could follow Paradharma. So that means हमें भी अर्जुन बनना है, दोस्ती करनी है कृष्ण भगवान से, आंखें बंद कर लेनी है, and whatever he says is follow him blindly. चाहे वो धर्म है, स्व है, परा है, अपारा है, that should not take care. But उस जगह तक पहुंचने के लिए is a big task, isn't भाई? नहीं?
You have to be sure it's Krishna or Guru's word and not your intellect telling you something and you're doing it, following your intellect. But yes, that is true. Arjun, when finally he surrendered to Krishna, he said, okay, you tell me whom to kill, where to go. I'll just follow you. That's all. And that's essentially what he did, right? So that is the whole idea. See, we are taken control of our buddhi. When we make our sarthi Krishna, we put our buddhi to Krishna, said, okay, you tell me how to do. That's when the magic will start to unfold. So yes, everybody did, but then they operated out of their own. Even Duryodhan, for that matter, said, I know what is dharma and what is adharma, but my nature compels me to do this, and I can't do anything about it. Right? So many people, they were compelled by their nature because we are in a conditioned state. We are so hooked on to things that we have thought about deeply, contemplated about deeply in multiple lifetimes. It's very difficult to get rid of those sanskars. So that's why we need to start aligning to God's will, do our bhakti, seva, sadhana, and start building those sanskars so that eventually we can, start aligning more towards paradharma and start getting better at it. Yes, Ajitji and Ajitji, I see two more hands, two new hands. Yeah, sorry.
Actually, regarding that statement about other Pandavas realizing Krishna is God or not, there are two questions if I can quickly read. So, Tarunji is asking, was not Bhagavad Gita spoken to all around Arjun Krishna chariot? Or was it spoken only to Arjun and none heard except him?
Yeah, so God did like this and snap, time was stopped. Okay, and one-on-one with Arjun, time just stopped at that point. You can watch the new Mahabharata, they have showed it very nicely. God just stopped the time at that point. And when the message was done, and then he snapped the finger again and things came back. So he stopped time at that point. It was only Arjun. Okay, others, they did not have, see, if you, in the previous shloka, he said, I am revealing this message to you because you are my friend and my devotee. Now, do you think everybody was devotee there? They were not. So they did not even have the ability to hear the message of Bhagavad Gita. And that is why God had a one-on-one. He created a time chamber for Arjun to relate this message. He just stopped the time. Sanjay could hear that because he had the divine vision from Vedavyas. Nobody else could.
And was it during the war that Pandavas realized that Lord Krishna is God, or was it before the war, or if they at all realized?
We can do a session on Pandavas. Maybe I can relate that story. They were all realized souls. Okay, and it was not a coincidence that Kunti said and they became husband of Draupadi. Draupadi was also born of the Panchakanyas. We'll talk about that. So Pandavas were all realized people. Okay, they were realized souls, and they were part of that Leela that unfolded during Mahabharata. All five of them.
And again, this is coming up. Bhishmaji followed Aparadharma, then how come he went to God's abode then?
Bhishma Pitama, we said, right? He followed Paradharma as well. Finally, he was Sharnagat to God. That is what he did. Okay, that was just a Leela that he was doing to glorify God. There are a lot of people who come to glorify God only. Their purpose is to only glorify, and they will do contradictory thing to God during their lifetimes. Even, A lot of villains that come, Ravan, Kumbhakaran, they are also realized souls. So similarly, Bhishma Pitama was not, and he was a very elevated Rasik saint. And finally, he aligned to God's will only. He made him break his vow. Who Krishna was. And he meditated upon him even for those 6 months that he was on the bed of arrows. So he was not a regular person, right? He was one of the 12 Mahajans and he was a Rasik saint. So he was just participating in that Leela to glorify God.
Awesome. So Ajit ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Ajit ji.
Radhe Radhe. Actually, few days before we have discussed the sloka Yada Yada hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata. And today we are discussing the status of Dharma at that time. So this is not irony that was it a Kali Yuga or a Dwapar Yuga when Bhagwan Lord Krishna has taken a birth? So this is my question.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Dwapar,
Look at
not
Dharma.
Yada Yada hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati. Is it not controversy? Sloka.
In what
because
sense?
God has declared that whenever there is a deterioration of religion, then only I used to take birth. So this is my question. Radhe Radhe.
Yes, so there was a deterioration. Just imagine if your Kulvadhu is being dragged into the court and being disrobed, what would have been the state of the regular women during that time? And there were so many asuras, Jarasandh and people like that. So that it was so widespread at that point, the adharma aspect of it. And when we talk about adharma, I'll get into that. It was so widespread that it required an intervention, and that is when Krishna took dissension. If you technically speaking, what is dharma? Anything that is done nimit to God is dharma. Anything other than that, that is adharma. So if going by strict definition, we all are doing adharma for most part of our life. But God is going by the material definition. He's saying unrighteousness at the platform of a body, right, which is happening when it's become so widespread, that is when I descend. If he goes by the strict definition of a soul, then it is adharma happening all the time or most of the time. He should be descending every left, right, and center. So he's going by the Aparadharma definition. And that is where the decline was so rampant at that point. And it was at such an advanced stage that he thought, now my intervention is needed. And that is when he took avatar. So he's not going by the strict definition. He's going by the lenient definition to take avatar.
Ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe. Nitinji, I have a question that if at that time, when Draupadi was dragged to court and Krishna appeared because of the adharma, how is the world relative to that today?
How is the world relative to that today? Yeah, I think in that sense, God has a macro picture around what is happening at every age, right? When he would call it enough at this point. So in that sense, it's very difficult to know relative to that how the world is, but I can only make a informed guess around it that it's not as bad as it used to be at that point, which requires God intervention, right? Tougher the things get, when things get really difficult, that's when it calls for a drastic intervention. So God taking an avatar required it was kind of a drastic intervention. That means things would have reached a peak at that point. And that is why he came. So from our sense, we may say, things are equally as bad, but from God's sense, probably they are not. He has a macro picture better than we do, because he knows how much it can decay or what is the threshold of decay before he decides to intervene. So in that sense, relative sense, I would say probably not as bad as it used to be, because avatar is not happening anytime soon.
Thank you.
Also, probably the average or general standards of different yugas might be different, right? And then hence.
Very true. We see so many bad things happening around, right? So many tragic things that you hear about day in and day out. But at a macro level, I think God knows when it's time to intervene, and that will happen because everything is under his control from a macro level. For at a micro level, we are exercising our free will, and that law of karma dictates that. We'll take care of that. But at a macro level, when it reaches a stage where it's like, okay, now ground up reconstruction is needed, that's when he decides to descend down and just resets everything after that. And usher in a golden era after that. Yes, Preeti ji, maybe last one we can take, and then I know we typically end at 10 o'clock for our discussion and move to devotional segment, but we can take a couple of more questions.
Yes, Preeti ji.
Radhe Radhe Nitinji, beautiful session, very impressive. I have two questions, so they would take time. So in the interest of time, I've posted them in the feedback tracker. Radhe Radhe.
If you have something, maybe for the benefit of others, we can take those. And yes, please put your questions in the feedback tracker. I know it's a pretty interesting topic. So that way you'll fill it up as well. So maybe we can take one of those, Preeti ji.
Okay, so since the slide is here on the screen, I would like to know a little bit more about Sarvottam versus Sarvashresht.
Sarvottam versus Sarvashresht. Okay. Yeah. So whole life, this guy, Karan, was, trying to prove that he is Sarvottam, better than Arjun. And that is a trap we all fall into as well. We try to prove I am better than you, right? Instead, God says, why don't you go for becoming Sarvashresht, best in what you do? You're not comparing any, you're a lone mountaineer. You're just competing with yourself. Sarvashresht means becoming the best that you can be. Sarvottam is you're competing with somebody. Now you have envy, jealousy, and stuff like that. Why do you even compare with others? Let me just focus on myself and become the best version of myself, and everything else will be taken care of. So he spent his entire thought process mind around competing with Arjun, to prove that I am better than him. So Krishna told him that, go for, Sarvottam, you should have gone for Sarvashresht part of it. Sarvottam does not matter. So if we go for marks and ranks and the first position and all that stuff, it's not important. That is why even for our kids, it's important for us to tell them, you do the best that you can do, rather than thinking I'm the first. All that is fine. It's all relative. You are a lone mountaineer. You're just competing against yourself. So as long as we are becoming a better version of ourselves with each passing day, we are better than what we were yesterday and less better than what we are going to be tomorrow. I think we are on the course, but that becomes Sarvashresht in that point, in whatever we do.
Can I take some more questions from the
So
chat?
maybe a couple more, and then we move to devotional segment. Pooja is waiting, and we are waiting for Pooja to, not Pooja, sorry, Kavita to
Kavita
sing.
is waiting with her Kavita.
Can spare us maybe 2 more minutes, and then we'll move to our devotional segment.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's a question. Arjuna had Krishna giving knowledge through Bhagavad Gita directly, and hence Arjuna was able to completely surrender and listen to Krishna. But since we don't have that, we have Guru who advises us to train our intellect and equip our intellect with knowledge and act accordingly. Isn't this controversial? To surrender, we can't use our intellect in any way? Question mark.
No, you have to use your intellect. Who's asking not to use it? But do it up to a certain level. If you keep on using it for the rest of your life, see, this is also a dialogue, right? Unfolding between Arjun and Krishna. He's not saying, okay, Krishna, whatever you say, he's asking him questions, probing questions on our behalf. And same thing happens in our mind also, right? When we go for guru shopping or guru hopping, we use our intellect, right? Something clicks, something does not click, something will pierce your heart. But once you settle down and you have done that, then you have to start exercising that and seeing the results for yourself. Because if you keep on doing tark vitark for the rest of your life, then where will you will lose out on the opportunity to learning and implement it as well, right? So you do all that tark vitark to begin with. Guru will be more than happy to answer your questions. And once the questions settle down in your heart and you realize a few things, then it's time to start exercising Sharnagat part of it. Take your time. Nobody's asking you to do it from day one. It's everybody's individual journey. And when we do that initial thing, like we do window shopping, we do guru shopping as well. You go listen around different people, listen to different, philosophies that they say, see where your questions are getting answered, see the message that cuts through your heart, and then practice some of their principles. And when you start practicing and you start realizing, then you don't have to keep on questioning it for the rest of your life. It's like a cooked rice. One piece of it is cooked, you can safely assume the rest of it is cooked as well. Because if you keep on doubting for the rest of your life, then Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita only, Sanshayatma vinashyati na lokosti na parosukham. Basically, a skeptical mind, doubtful mind neither can have peace here nor in the life thereafter. So faith is a very important ingredient. But in order to build that faith, take your time. Don't rush into it.
This is one more question. If Krishna revealed his cosmic form to all present, then possibly people would have surrendered and there would have been no war at Kurukshetra.
No. He showed his cosmic form to Duryodhan as well. And Duryodhan thought he's a cousin of Harry Potter. Okay. And by the way, if Krishna was to impress people by showing his cosmic form, then we will be worshipping his gunas. He's Aishwarya Shakti, not Krishna. So that is never the objective of an avatar, to impress people by showing their magic powers. And so people will, that's not the point, right? What if your power is not there? Will you not surrender then? So he did show his cosmic form to Duryodhan also. In fact, even if he shows to you, you'll not believe it. Your mind will say some chemical locha is happening here in my head, or this guy has some siddhis. So it's not so easy. Despite the fact he did that, if when it was needed, not to show the everybody, but people did not do that. So, and the idea, God wants to give you a choice. He does not want to impress you and force your or influence your opinion. When he influences your opinion, he's manipulating you. Would you like to manipulate your kids, or would you let them choose you? Which one will give you more satisfaction? Similarly, God does not influence, manipulate, or try to impress us. He wants us to do it through our own volition, as a free will, exercise of our free will, as a matter of choice.
Just last comment. So in Gita, Arjun asked all relevant questions that might urge if we also hear Gita. So looks like Arjun represented all of us very well.
He's a proxy on our side. Everything and anything and everything under the sun you can possibly think of, Arjun has asked, or it is answered in Bhagavad Gita. You cannot say this question is not. Everything is answered. So Arjun did a fantastic job, right? We should not be surprised. He was a Narnarayana avatar. So on our behalf, he asked everything. Okay, I think now you can put your question in the feedback tracker if there are more. Let's move to our devotional segment, and you're welcome to stay back. We do some devotional chantings now, and Kavita has prepared, and I'm looking forward to you, Kavita. All of us are. So please, all yours from here on.
Yes, I'll just unmute her. Are you unmuted? No?
You're not unmuted?
Just a minute.
We need to give voice to Kavita.
Radhe Radhe everyone.
Radhe.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Kavita.
this Kavita is written by Dr. Mamta Sharma and copied by me. Okay.
All right.
कि मीरा ने मूरत को जो सुलाया तो नटखट जाग के सो गया होगा, गोद के स्पर्श में मधु को पाकर वाहन कोमल हो गया होगा। मीरा ने प्रेम की बेल जो बोई तो कान्हा भी अंकुर बो गया होगा। मीरा ने आंसू के मोती सजाए तो कान्हा भी धागा पिरो गया होगा। ये फूलों को सांप को देख के माला में धागे सा सांप को सी गई मीरा। राणा ने प्याला दिया विष का और सोचा अभी की अभी गई मीरा। मीरा ने विष तो पिया ही नहीं, ऐसी मौत को मार के जी गई मीरा। कृष्ण के प्रेम का प्याला है ये, प्रणधार के प्यार को पी गई मीरा। प्रणधार के प्यार को पी गई मीरा। राधा को कृष्ण की देह मिली, बिन देह के नेह निभा गई मीरा। ब्रज कुंज में राधा ने रास रचा, मरुभूमि में कुंज खेला गई मीरा। कृष्ण ने द्वापर में राधा को गाया तो कलयुग में कृष्ण को गा गई मीरा। कृष्ण के प्रेम का राधा पे कर्ज था, राधा का कर्ज चुका गई मीरा। राधा का कर्ज चुका गई मीरा। कृष्ण तो श्याम थे, श्याम था काजल, काजल आज के सो गई मीरा, शाम के नाम को ऐसा रटा, खुद गोरी से सावरी हो गई मीरा। कंठ के पंथ में प्रेम के अश्व की वृष्टि से सृष्टि भिगो गई मीरा, और उस खेत के रेत में मोती उगे, जिस खेत में बैठ के रो गई मीरा, जिस खेत के जिस खेत के जिस खेत में बैठ के रो गई मीरा। हीराना ने ओझा बुलाया बताया कि भूत या प्रेत है मीरा के भीतर। गिरधर गिरधर की रट ले तज, घूंघट घूमती है दर बेदर। जीभ पे गिरधर नाम ना आ सके, मंत्र कोई ऐसा मारिए मुंह पर। ओझा ने मीरा की आंखों में झांका, तो ओझा भीगा उठा गिरधर गिरधर, ओझा भीगा उठा गिरधर गिरधर। कि बांध के घुंघरू नाची तो नाची, कि नाच को नाच नचा गई मीरा। शाम की मोहनी मूरत देखी, कि मूरत में ही समा गई मीरा, कि मूरत में ही समा गई मीरा। I'm done.
Oh, wow, Kavita, that was a beautifully recited Kavita, I must say that. And
Thank
so
you.
many pearls that came out of this. Where did you get this one from? I think I've never heard it before.
YouTube.
YouTube, huh?
I'll share the link.
Very nicely done. And
Thank
thank you for bringing it to the session. Awesome is what I would say. Anybody who wants to say anything on, the beautiful narration from Kavita today?
Very, very beautiful. The lines were very deep, and I would really request you to put it up on the community portal, please. I would really like to
Sure,
see
sure.
and read it thoroughly.
Loved it.
Sure. Will do.
Recited multiple times. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful poem that you recited. So thank you so much, Kavita, for that.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
I guess Shyamji wants to add a
Shyamji wants
comment,
to
so
say
I'll
something?
first take him and then Swatiji might
He
want.
wants to do something as well. Yes, Shyamji.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sandhya. Yeah, the line that Oja saw in Mira's eyes, and he also went Girdhar, Girdhar. The best part, no? Shyam is so cunning, so smart. Uske against you can't go. What come ever? And the way he does all leelas, it's amazing. And thank you, Krita, for such wonderful poem. And I guess these three sisters are doing wonderful. Monica, आप गायब है बहुत टाइम से. आपकी बारी भी हम लोग वेट कर रहे हैं बहुत दिनों से. Thank you. राधे राधे.
खुद गोरी से सांवरी हो गई मीरा. That's what Sandhya said.
सही लगा. हाँ, काजल से, right? That's so beautiful.
Very nice. All right, Swati ji, you wanted to sing as well?
Yes, Swatiji, Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I would like to sing small 5 minutes. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
shortly.
ordinary bhajan, not of Swamiji or Maharaj ji bhajan. Okay, I'll just start. Radhe Radhe. यशोमती मैया से बोले नंद लाला, राधा क्यों गोरी मैं क्यों काला, राधा क्यों गोरी मैं क्यों काला। बोले मुस्काती मैया ललन को बताया, बोली मुस्काती मैया ललन को बताया। काली अंधियारी आधी रात में तो आया, लाडला कन्हैया मेरा, ओ लाडला कन्हैया मेरा, काले कमली वाला इसीलिए काला। यशोमती मैया से बोले नंद लाला, राधा क्यों गोरी मैं क्यों काला। बोले मुस्काती मैया सुन मेरे प्यारे, बोले मुस्काती मैया सुन मेरे प्यारे,
गोरी गोरी राधिका के नैन कजरा रे, काले नैनो वाली ने, ओ काले नैनो वाली ने ऐसा जादू डाला, इसीलिए काला। यशोमती मैया से बोले नंद लाला, राधा क्यों गोरी मैं क्यों काला। इतने में राधा प्यारी आई बल खाती, मैंने नहीं जादू डाला, बोली इठलाती। ओ मैंने नहीं जादू डाला, बोली इठलाती। मैया कन्हैया तेरा जग से निराला, इसीलिए काला। यशोमती मैया से बोले नंद लाला, राधा क्यों गोरी मैं क्यों काला। थैंक यू। राधे राधे।
Thank you, Swati ji. Radhe Radhe. Beautifully sung. It's a very, very beautiful song. Bhajan, rather. Great. So, we had a good icing on the cake today with our devotional segment as well, like we always do. I think we are good, right? Today, or anybody else? We have already reached about half an hour mark more than our session. So, thank you, everybody. Tomorrow, we will continue on this discussion. We will get into 4.8 as well. And we will talk about what is the gati of your chit, basically, or your antakaran's gati. Okay, we'll talk about that topic in great detail more, and it's going to be another exciting session. I can promise you that. And we'll talk about some more concepts about God's dissension, and then more introspectively, what is our gati? Okay, it's a very important topic. Today we did Paradharma, Aparadharma, and tomorrow we'll talk about what is the gati. Gati means where is your heart actually getting pulled towards in your day-to-day lives. Yes, Kavita, you wanted to say something?
There is a beautiful, there are 4 lines that Jyoti ji has sent. I just want to read them out.
Sure.
प्रबल प्रेम के पाले पढ़ के प्रभु का नियम बदलते देखा, अपना मान भले टल जाए, भक्त का मान न टलते देखा.
No wonder, Krishna. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying so beautiful. Thank you to Jyoti ji for sharing this.
Thank you, Jyoti ji. Very nice. See, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying in the shlokas, he's saying, declare it boldly, Arjun, that my devotees will never be lost. And he's asking Arjun to say that. He's not stating as himself, because he can break his word, but he'll never break the word of his devotee. Okay, that is the power of devotion. So we are all very fortunate to be on this path and to have a Rasik saint as our guru. So let's make the most of this opportunity, golden opportunity in our life. Great. So with that, we come to the end of today's session. Have a wonderful evening and a great rest of your day. Good to see you, Laddu. You came in early. I like your new look. Different look she has today. Right? Something different. But yeah, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We'll continue on our discussion. Radhe Radhe. Good day. Good night from my side.
Yes, Radhe Radhe. Thank you. See you all tomorrow.